Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. So, some of you have probably seen the latest controversy about CARE and one of its employees who was caught spying on them, recording them, and I guess passing along that information to some sort of anti-Muslim hate group, and then using their company card to buy weapons. I don't know. Walaikum salam. And so, what is this, right? I think we need to be able to have an honest conversation about the status of where things are in our community here in America, right? Amongst American Muslims. And that is, by and large, most institutions, whether they be masajid, schools, or other organizations like CARE, right? They are largely beholden to the agenda of those who are foreign born or the descendants of those who were born elsewhere. And even for those who were born here, but their parents came from elsewhere, it would seem that an undue proportion of our fellow brothers and sisters, their emotions, their thoughts, their ideas, their dreams, their aspirations are almost entirely circumvented and defined by really not even just white aspirationalism, but just so completely defined by wanting to seek appeasance from them, right? Trying to find a safe place. And so in some ways, the brother's actions, I'm going to just refer to him as Ronan. I think his name is Roman, but I'm going to call him Ronan because he kind of went off the reservation. It's in some ways a logical conclusion of this fear and self-loathing. Right, that's kind of the logical conclusion of, at least as I see it, the sort of fear and self-loathing that a lot of Muslims have today. And it's not just him. I mean, we can, whether it's a certain playwright who works for the New York Times and sits cozy and snuggles up with Zionists, just we are increasingly seeing a cringe-worthy move, not simply towards the left, right? I think that would be a very simple way of summarizing it, but rather a capitulation to fear and an unwillingness to muster the courage to make your own way. And then two, I think there's a need for a kind of community therapy session to deal with the lack of self-worth and self-loathing that apparently many of us are walking around with silently, suffering with. And so I stand by my statement when I said that this particular institution, I do believe, has long lived past its usefulness. It siphons off millions of dollars out of the community that could be repurposed to other far more important causes, instead of trying to convince those that don't like us to like us, but to actually invest in schools so that our kids can actually get indoctrinated in the correct way of thinking and believing. Yes, that's right. Indoctrination is going to happen, and so we should be unapologetic about it. That's why I fight tooth and nail to keep my daughter in a Muslim school, because that's what I want. I want my daughter to be indoctrinated into Islam. And so, there are many other causes that the millions of dollars is put into could be better repurposed. Two, I think it's really high time that we also have a sit down and to talk to some of our fellow brothers and sisters that, while I certainly empathize with your historical experience of leaving your homelands and coming somewhere new and having to learn a new language and find your way, it's still reprehensible to come away from those experiences and be so completely self-loathing. You know, whether it's men shaving their beards, women not wearing hijab, and again, not out of some earnest engaging of the nusus, of texts, of sources, which would be hard to come by, right? And I'm using this as low-hanging fruit, but simply because that is what Chuck and Betty, that is how they roll. And in fact, if tomorrow Chuck and Betty decided that they were going to grow beards and that they were, going to wear headscarves, I'm sure we would be right there, goose stepping along, mandating that that is what we have to do. And so we really need to have some kind of a team huddle. Otherwise, as a friend of mine said today, American Muslims, and by this I don't mean just black American or converts, I mean Muslims who are seriously committed to being able to live dignified lives as Muslims. So this will include so-called immigrant Muslims, foreign-born, the whole shebang, right? We may have to have another conversation, not to split up into groups, because Allah has forbade this, right? وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. But we may have to really seriously think about continuing to throw our weight behind and having anything to do with these organizations that seem to either have grown very long in the tooth, or, to be quite honest, seem to betray the agendas that we would, that will benefit us and our children. And so I don't want to make too much of this one event. It's almost humorous, right? I mean, dude is linking up with some sort of Stormfront group and then uses the company car to go buy, an AR-15 and ammunition. I mean, obviously, hopefully his self-loathing wasn't getting to the point that he would want to inflict harm upon other Muslims. But, hey, it's 2021. Clearly anything is a possibility. But we really need to also do some critical self-reflection and realize that, money talks. And the reason why these orgs have come into existence and have persisted is because of money. And they are able to, one way or another, obtain the funding to continue to further their agendas. And so something that those of us that may scoff at this and, can't believe that, we need to also then be critical of ourselves. Why have we thus far been unable to raise the money necessary to build institutions that will also reflect and further our own agenda? So anyway, just sharing that as a quick thought here. I gotta drop off lunch to my daughter. It's the last day of school here at IOK. Alhamdulillah. Then we get a break for a couple weeks. So anyway, I just wanted to leave that as a quick thought. I would say that we would be much better served to move beyond disappointment, shock, or anger and say, you know what? It's high time that we build and fund organizations that reflect how we think and how we feel. And to make sure that there are clear boundaries and objectives drawn upon those organizations. I mean, that's one of my issues with CARE, is that I feel like they may have started off with good intentions, but they eventually just kind of wandered into, speaking on all kinds of topics and affairs that are way outside of their wheelhouse. So anyway, hopefully this will shed a little light further on what I intended when I made my little post earlier. So وصلي وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم.